Hi, everyone. Welcome to B-Sides. I'm really excited to kick off this conference. We've been working really hard as a team, all the B-Sides founders and presenters, as well as all the people that are able to volunteer. We know that this year with COVID and not being able to be presenting in person has been a real bummer. But with this conference, we hope to brighten your day and on top of it, bring some education and community back. So with this presentation, what I want to do here is really go over our Azure Sentinel. I had a really difficult time over the years trying to build out SIEMs, especially in bigger companies. And moving to a startup has been even extra difficult with staffing needs and as well as being able to hire security. Luckily, Microsoft came up with a really great solution. They put together this product called Azure Sentinel, which is a SIEM, and I'm going to explain why I'm fallen in love with Microsoft, sort of. Their platform has been really easy to build upon, as well as scale. So let's get into the presentation. So my name is Chris Maenner. I already introduced myself. I'm going to be around the conference all day. I'm going to be not only presenting, but hosting the conference. So I'm one of the B-Sides individuals to being able to monitor as well as put together a great conference for you guys. You can find me on LinkedIn, you can find me on GitHub, Twitter, on Discord. So if you want to communicate or ask any kind of questions during the conference or post-conference, please feel free to hit me up. I'm a native Philadelphia individual, so it'll be easy for me to find me around the city. Now, why am I talking about Azure Sentinel? SIEMs, security incident event monitoring tools, have been the bane of my existence, but not in a real negative way, just it's been a pain to manage them over time. I had to deal with vendors, had to deal with data problems, had to deal with staffing problems, had to deal with scaling problems. But overall, they've been challenging. Now, why I really want to highlight Azure Sentinel here, especially as a one-person security engineer at the time when I was first building out the startup security program, I really needed to figure out a really quick method to not only help the business grow, but at the same time, figure out a method to better protect, as well as offload my time. I had to figure out some kind of method to not only help grow the business, but take a method so that I could be able to build out infrastructure, build out a team, build out staff, but at the same time, make it flexible and easy for myself. So as a challenging dilemma, the limited security staffing needs were very hard. By the time I was able to get some staffing that actually knew how to do proper security, DevOps, SRE work, they were lacking in regards to building out SIEM. So what they really knew were good security tooling, knew how to handle incident events, how to handle incident response. So this is where Azure Sentinel was a good fit. Now, the other challenging problem that we've had from a startup is we're cloud first, we're cloud native. So how do you actually scale and protect a global community? We had to figure out, not only the challenges of business, but how to take an engineering staff of 10 at the time, and in about a year grow to 150. With that, not only are we growing the engineering staff, but also all of the business development, all of infrastructure, operations, executives. I needed to figure out a method because we only had a staff of 2 to 3 security engineers, and they were basically trying to secure a lot of our applications and our platform. How are we going to secure our environment as we grew? So cloud native, that's another big problem that we ran into. And then again, as a startup, we're lucky. During COVID, we were able to figure out a really good business case and make it grow. So with exponential growth means securities looked negatively upon. It's not that they don't want security first. They just think of security second, or maybe even third. It's mostly business, it's products. So how do we tackle this problem? So my objective when building out a SIEM was not for maintenance. Didn't have third-party vendors. I can't have vendor support. We don't have the time or the money. So we had to be creative. So my objective going into our security program and figuring out how to build a system is autonomous, serverless, immutable infrastructure. I know this is very popular to words that are getting thrown around a lot, but Azure Sentinel affords this. Not only Azure Sentinel, but Azure as a whole. As the second leading cloud vendor in the world, this was a really great method to be able to build out a security program. Not only minimum staff, but we're more of a developer-focused startup. So I'm lacking some of those engineers that can think very low level, lower on the OSI stack. So with immutable infrastructure, you want to look at it as servers and containers that are never modified after deployment. And that's really important for me so that I can just focus on code, I can focus on rules, and I can deploy things very quick and efficient, bring in new staff, and be able to just figure out more of a business problem, figure out more of business risk, and figure out how to secure all of that all in one shot. So the methods that go into creating a strong security incident event monitoring platform is you need to figure out what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses, and most importantly, what are the business problems? That brings in Azure Sentinel. So I've been highlighting and talking about Azure Sentinel, so we're going to go very high level into what it does. I have some videos later on at the end of this presentation that you can look up. They do a much better job of explaining the technical. I want to try to really focus on the use cases here, as well as why I want to use serverless-based infrastructure throughout our security program. Now, Azure Sentinel, again, is a cloud-native security incident and event monitoring system. And you want to look at it as four primary objectives here. It's collect, detect, investigate, and respond. It's pretty much how the Sentinel platform works. The SIEM platform is nothing new in regards to the methodologies. So you can come in and get your team scaled up really quick, not worry about the infrastructure, and focus on the data and the quality of how you actually action on alerts. I like to break down Sentinel in an order of operations. So there's three main terminologies that you need to know about with Azure Sentinel. It's the hunt. Look at it as like an investigation query, the syntax, how you perform your queries. So in this case, you're using Custo language. You can search, you can take some video tutorials. It's a very flexible language set that has a very low learning curve. So you don't have to know a lot about programming. You just have to know a basic SQL, and it adds some really nice Scala-based functionality. So you can break apart JSON objects or arrays or any other syntax that you're looking for with basic data structures. Second part you want to look at is the workbook. So the workbook, look at it as like the trigger of how you would want to build out your hunt. This is where you do dashboards. This is where you would take those queries and implement them so that your analyst or your product teams can look at what's occurring against their product or their platform. And then the playbook is really what the action is taken. And what's cool about the playbook methodology is that you can really make this very reactive or proactive in regards to remediation. I kind of blend the two with our team. I do this on purpose so that I can kind of bring in new security engineers or non-security engineers that really understand IT operations or even like product and development and tell me a problem that they're facing. Then they will be able to articulate to me what I'm trying to solve. I'm able to basically create the query, and then on the remediation piece of it, figure out how to apply Azure's logic apps or any of their serverless infrastructure to proactively try to remediate the low-hanging fruit, or alert on any complex problems so that we can then action on as an incident response team. So we got a little crazy. As we wanted to learn Azure Sentinel, my team at the time was like, like I said, like 2 to 3. We had a really aggressive schedule. We had a growing business. We also had COVID. So how do we solve this quickly? My boss kind of like threw out ideas like, hey, there's a hackathon going down by Azure. And I know that you're getting ready to deploy Azure Sentinel. Why don't you take a stab at the hackathon while you're at it? It's something fun. You can build out a team organization, build out a trust, as well as win some money. So Azure Sentinel had 3 main objectives: quality, the value, and the technical implementation. So we didn't want to, tackle this in any obscure way. We wanted to do something that was quick and easy because we only had 5 weeks when we found out about this. So we had to move quick. Luckily, the team that I had, they were very skilled. They're very high. They're good engineers that can think very objectively, as well as learn quickly. Even though they didn't know the tools, I could kind of direct them to say, here are the problem use cases that the business is facing. Here's how you build out your queries, and then you implement how we want to remediate. Now, week 1, again, planning. Week 2, build and deploy. At this point, we were able to build out a strong CI/CD. The infrastructure was a blend of containers. They call this Azure Container Instance. We were using AKS, Azure Kubernetes Service, very lightly at the time, because we were still a little bit newer to Kubernetes on Azure, as well as their platform as a service, using all PaaS deployment. So that's where the serverless piece comes in. And what's good about that is that Azure does all the security and bakes in all of the identity management and integrations with other bindings of their services. Week 3 and 4 was really our development and testing phases, so we can verify that all the use cases worked. They operated the way we wanted. At that point, we were able to document and submit. It was a really fun project, but what I want to really show you here is 3 methods of what we focused on in data collection. Data collection has always been the real big issue with SIEM. SIEMs want you to deploy agents on a server, VM. They do all the compilation. They're able to do the extraction, the transformation, the loading of data. I always was very irritated with this method from vendors because I hate being forced into using something. I like to be very creative in regards to tools that I like to use. Something that makes me be able to integrate with database systems or servers or frameworks from a developer stack of choice. So what was great about this is that it was very flexible with the data collection. They have some standards that they like to use, but in this case, I wanted them to focus on 3 major objectives because 1, we had our facilities, we had all of our network equipment. 2, we had all of our stack in regards to how we deployed all of our code, as well as how we presented all of our applications. Like we said, we're cloud first. And then 3, we had multi-cloud. So I had to figure out an easy method. So the first part was syslog. Syslog was a really easy method here because how we were able to deploy this was using Elastic Beats. And Elastic Beats has really, really great integration with Kafka. And I put security in place so that we could allow syslog ingest from a subnet perspective, but I needed it open on the internet, and I had to figure out a method so that I could easily deploy and also protect our environment. So using Beats, deploying this on a Kubernetes stack, we had a load balancer up front. We had a firewall only allowing our facilities traffic to come in. And then from there, on the back end, it was able to integrate natively with Azure Event Hub, which is the Kafka piece. So even if we get exploited or someone is able to figure out our syslog ingest from a facility level, it would never take down our system because Kubernetes was able to scale as well as be able to collect information on the Event Hub. And on the Event Hub piece is where we would build out the filters to take in data that we needed. And we didn't have to worry about having any kind of system failure on the back end with a traditional syslog server. Second part of it is our webhooks. Because our use cases are using HTTP methods, the webhook method here, we used Azure Functions. That is, look at it as a serverless HTTP trigger that binds to other services. And what's really nice about Azure using PaaS, their platform as a service, is that these Azure Functions, if you come from AWS world, Azure Functions are a Lambda. So just so you can know the comparison between the two. We used a Node.js stack here. Our startup uses Node.js, a lot of JavaScript, TypeScript, as well as a little bit of Golang, but mostly we're a Node shop. So when we were deploying these Node applications, it was really easy to do very simple methods to connect into other cloud-first services. And then with Azure Functions, what's nice about it, they have these things called bindings that all you have to do is integrate with any of the type of services that are available on Azure, and it will be able to write to it. So with those function apps, I was able to collect data, send it to the Event Hub, and that Event Hub would basically be able to send the information into the Azure Log Analytics, which is the platform that powers Sentinel. The third part is the connectors. If you are not a developer or you're not an infrastructure person, you don't need to really go into the level I'm talking about. I'm building things in a very unique way for unique methods so I can scale and not worry about having staff. But what's nice about Azure Sentinel, you don't even need to worry about the webhooks or syslog. You can just use their direct or grand list of cloud service connectors. What that means is the direct is any service that you run within Azure, you can consume that information and be able to alert on it. So if you're running Azure Active Directory, it will collect all the auth logs. If you're using the PaaS, it will collect all those application logs. Then with multi-cloud, it has native integration with AWS. So you can collect all of your AWS logs from CloudFront and be able to action on things in one single pane of glass. This makes it really flexible for incident response teams, especially where they're not used to using different multi-clouds. If they're then, in like a lot of our analysts, they're very used to using Azure tools. So this was a really easy method for us to collect data and action on things. So the use cases, we wanted to make it simple. We had two major problems. One, we had Slack, and we had to use Slack that was not really configured in the most secure manner. We eventually were able to catch up by getting a Slack Enterprise account, but it was very expensive. Slack Enterprise runs roughly $25,000 to $30,000 a month. But what's nice about it is that you get native API integration. And with that, we had this use case where we had to figure out how to do DLP. To look at what people were using to download information that was dormant over time. So instead of integrating a DLP solution, which was an extra $10,000, an extra $20,000, an extra $50,000 a month, we instead just built out these use cases with the API. Because we can build out those webhooks, we can collect information at will, and then we're able to focus use cases on what we wanted to collect. And in this case, we wanted to know high number of downloads of sensitive files, Slack file names. So if people were, crawling Slack for any kind of information, we're able to detect on this. That was abnormal to their user behavior. And then a maximum daily download. And basically what that means is like, not many people download a ton of information from Slack. So if we saw an uptick of that, we would alert and action on their account. And depending on their role, we would automatically deactivate their account. We had that native integration with Slack to our IT operations team. So it was like easy push button. So they didn't even have to go into Sentinel. It was all just one easy flow. The second use case was the Cisco Meraki network. I chose Cisco Meraki because again, we didn't have staff. So I needed a programmatic way to control our environment. So we did a lot of orchestration. And with that, that allowed us to control our SD-WAN at the facility level. As we tested SD-WAN, it's a nice platform, but because we're cloud first, we can do a lot more controls in the cloud. But with that, we also had to worry about LT backup. Our facilities run really lean, and the code base that we control and a lot of the tools that we build, we can make those calls, and we try to keep it under like 50 milliseconds for every API call. So we don't need a lot of bandwidth, but we did have a problem because our managed services, as we were growing our facilities, we had to take shortcuts on what equipment we had to get because of cost. We didn't get to control the routers. Because of that, we could never tell if an IP changed, if say, for example, ISP failed over to the LTE. So we had to have these native webhooks that just listened on the Meraki network for IP changes. And if they did, we would then change a configuration on the fly so that we would be able to keep the business going and limit bandwidth usage by our employees. And this allowed us to grow over hours of the night because our business is mostly more evening hours, and we didn't have staff or incident response at the time when we were building this use cases out. So with that, this allowed, I like to call Sentinel autonomous mitigation. I was able to sleep a little bit easier at night because I knew Sentinel was doing the hard work that my staff couldn't afford to do, because they were more focused on building out products and building out business and building out organizations. So Sentinel was a nice complement to our security team by focusing on specific use cases, implement our security posture, and then at the same time, allow our employees to rest easy and focus on business needs instead of worrying about rules and policies. So here's just a 24-hour collection of data. So you can kind of see under 10 million requests on app services. Over that 24-hour period, we have 150 alerts. And this was removing a lot of the false positives. So these were actual events. We found that it wasn't that they were being malicious. Our user base is very creative. They're a young bunch that are trying to grow a business. So they're doing a lot of different things. And by setting up these alerts, we mitigated a lot of abuse of infrastructure, of the integrity of our systems. So by doing this kind of work, we were able to go out and focus on training, and then this allowed our alerts to start going down over time. So a couple of results that really came out of this, the hackathon, we came in second place. We couldn't believe that we actually qualified. We created a serverless infrastructure, and later on I'll have links so that if you want to go check out the code or just check out what we did, you could look at it after our presentation. That was a really big booster to our security group, because not only did we get the morale up, but that showed our leadership like, wow, you need some budget and you need staff. Let's get you some. So now we were able to increase our budget, we increase our staff, and at that time we had around like 3 security engineers. I was able to grow the organization from, I'll say those 3 to a staff of 20, split the organization, then have IT ops with a new director so that they could focus on enterprise security, and then splinter our security team into product to focus on the future of our cloud. And now we're able to focus on more secure DevOps, build on an SRE group, as well as have a strong enterprise security posture. Another big thing that came out of that is discovery, so that we can prioritize how we handle our SLO or SLIs. Now, why is that kind of important? It just helps us with priority. And this was able to set expectations to our facilities to know when we should have our availability higher up on the network versus having our cloud infrastructure be more prioritized with development. So following up, Azure Sentinel is a really great platform. It's not the best when it comes to, just plug and play and making things work. You're going to need to know how to use a SIEM. So it's going to be a little bit of work and a little bit of training. Luckily, Azure does a really great job the Azure Sentinel level 400 Ninjas training, they like to call it. This will give you like 13 modules that will teach you everything about Azure Sentinel as well as Azure, and it's free with videos, with code, with credits, so that you can help build out an Azure Sentinel tool. If you have experience with building SIEMs, I have been using SIEMs for a good 10 years. If you are newer to SIEMs, this might be a little overwhelming, but I would say still go after it. It's really helpful because a lot of clouds are going to be offering this, not only with Azure, but also with AWS and Google Cloud, and then eventually something beyond that. And then also want to highlight is the Sentry platform that we built. So if you go to that link, you'll see the work that we did. You'll see the code base as well as individuals that help. And that's a special thanks. So the two security engineers that really helped me was Joseph Rivera and Damian Waltermeyer. And Damian, you might be seeing him throughout Discord. He's volunteering for BSidesPhilly. Without their help, we could have never got this done. So it was a really fun project that the three of us were able to put together. So thank you very much for attending this conference. And again, thank you for attending this presentation as well. If you want to reach me, you can reach me on Twitter at @thefinga. I'm also running our BSides Twitter. So if you just go to BSidesPhilly or you go to our website, you'll be able to interact with me or the team. And my GitHub is Maenner. I don't have a lot of my company code on there. It's a lot of just like little personal projects. I'll be expanding my portfolio, but thanks again for attending BSidesPhilly, and looking forward to communicating with everyone. Thank you so much.